Well, hello and welcome viewers and listeners to the weekly High Vibe Tribe expert interview brought to you by the mindbodyspiritnetwork.com. My name is Liz Garcia and I'm your happy host that is very happy to bring you transformational leaders, teachers, shamans, researchers, best-selling authors from all over the world. And today, that is no exception. Again, we have another exceptional guest with some super interesting information to share with us today. And before we introduce you to her, I'm going to prompt you with some questions so you can get a feel for what we're going to be talking about today. So, do you feel called to create a new map for your life that's true to your essence? If so, let the cardinal winds be your guide. Like helping spirits accessed by shamans and the archetypal energies in nighttime dream images, the wind is an alchemical force you can align with whenever you need guidance. Now, we have our special guest on today because she is a new faculty member. This is your first event, right, with the Shift Network, Renee?
It is.
So she has an event, a free online event that it's already passed, but you can access the recording for a fair amount of time, I would guess, through the end of 2019. I would think, based on my experience with the Shift, you'll be able to access that event recording. And it's called How to Become a Wind Alchemist with Renee Baribeau. And Renee, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You did great.
Okay, good. I usually ask before I get started, but I'm like, I thought I had it now because I've been writing it so much and I know a little bit of French. So let me tell you a little bit about our special guest today. She is what she calls the practical shaman, and you can find her website, thepracticalshaman.com. She is also a wind whistler and a Hay House author. Now, Renee, what's a wind whistler?
So a wind whistler is somebody who can call to the winds and bring up their energy to help cooperate and put a little wind in your sail so that you can get to where you're going and where you need to be in alignment with your magnetic north.
Okay, we're going to talk more about this in a minute. We want to get through the bio. But I figured, so it's a shamanic type of practice, presumably, or not?
It is a shamanic type of practice that was kind of lost on this for like the last 10,000 years or so. So it's relatively being re-inspired.
Okay. So I'm a big teacher of consciousness. Would you say that the wind has its own consciousness?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. All right. So Renee, how many books have you written with Hay House?
Just this one.
Okay. And when was it recently published?
It will have been out 2 years in February.
Okay. And how have you liked working with Hay House as a publishing company?
Well, when I met with the vice president, she said, you know, books are destined to get to Hay House. And I think I felt that 30 years ago when I started working with You Can Heal Your Life. And I always thought, and humbly so, that when the spirit takes the work that Louise Hay did to a deeper level of how to get all of these energetics working in your life, including especially your body, you know, mind and spirit.
Okay. So just as a little side note, I'm a bit of a mystic and clairvoyant and clairaudient. I would likely be called a shaman now that I understand what it is to an extent, an unwitting one nonetheless. But it's been a few years ago when it came into my awareness, the presence of Hay House Publishing. It's just like an energy came into my awareness. I'm like, oh, okay. And I've read her books and I know all that stuff. But then I met a gentleman who used to be the vice president of business development for Hay House. I'm like, okay, something's lining up here, possibly, who knows? But it was just kind of interesting. And now we have you. So here's another kind of magnetic something showing up. All right, my dear. So you're considered the go-to soul coach for innovative change makers. Could you please tell me what that means?
Well, since I'm a practical shaman and a businesswoman at heart, although the two were always separate, one in this hand and one in that hand. The people who were always attracted to me as coaching clients were business executive, philanthropists, more high level political type people, so that it kind of combined my spiritual with my business acumen.
Okay. So do you find that these people have accomplished much in their lives where they're wanting to go to another level?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Oh, okay.
Most people come to people because they want to get out of pain one way or another.
Oh.
And, so some people, like one who surprises me, was like a real big television executive. She's now going to school to learn shamanic practices. But she's one of the rare ones. Some of the other ones are just happy that, they found the right soul partner and that their lives are working, and many have had children. And so it all depends on why people came, because mostly their career was on the right trajectory, but the rest of their world wasn't quite in alignment to that.
Okay. So I have a question about, it seems like, and in fact, that gentleman I mentioned from Hay House has like an awareness of soul communication. Is that kind of like you have a different awareness of what soul is trying to do versus what the mind is trying to do? Is that, I assume there's a difference.
Well, some of the things is like when people are in one trajectory, say that it's good for them to align to their soul's purpose, because sometimes the glitter and the gold can get you, off kilter. And how do you stay true to that center of your own magnetics in order to make sure that your life isn't top heavy in one particular area over another? And so that's kind of the work that I tend to do. Okay,
cool. I mean, I care about that. I care about like letting go of everything I thought ever and try to like go with the heart. And, I spoke to Sandra about this. She's giving me a little advice. So it's kind of fun to consider that, because I understand in consciousness, spirit is way more powerful than the measly mind.
Well, and it's like Sandra says, it's been around for 4 billion years.
Oh.
So this consciousness that you're trying to tap into, we're just a little speck. So most of the decisions we'll make in this particular lifetime, if you put it on a scale of 1 to 4 billion, 1 second, they really just don't make much difference, in the bigger scheme of things.
Right.
So as a collective, though, I think we can really impact some change.
Yeah. So Renee is also a dynamic spiritual keynote speaker. She injects humor and practical wisdom into her inspirational wind work workshops. Now, Renee, let's hear about those wind work workshops. What's that all about?
So there's been a lot of them are about teaching people to navigate with their awakening compass, which is essentially that your body has all of the gifts it needs to navigate this human experience. Because remember, we're humans. And so when we're attuned to our body will always tell us the right directions to go. But the key is first of all, you have to be in your body. You have to know what your body's telling you. And you have to be able to interpret the winds that are blowing in at any given time, so that you can adjust your sails to get to the intended harbor that you want to go to. So there's basic wind work practices, and then there's, there was wind workers in the 1500s that used to make wind knots for sailors. And they would unravel these wind knots as they needed to get a little bit more power to get home. And so we work with the wind knots, and we do things like take wind walks. And we've actually even tried to do some kite divination at a workshop a couple years ago. But unfortunately, we were at a retreat center that didn't have any wind.
Oh, oops.
I tried with the golf cart and everything. So that kind of went out the window. But, so there's some divining tools that go with it. But these were all tools that were lost that I've uncovered through a process of following the wind tracks that I'm now bringing back to people that they can use to start to work more harmoniously with the winds, because we're at a point in our history where the winds are really kicking up, and they're kicking up to get our attention in a big way. And do they need to knock down your house before you wake up? I hope not. So a lot of the practices are teaching people about how to live in harmony with nature.
Okay. I mean, that's a key to shamanism, is the whole nature, living in harmony with nature. How do you describe shamanism, Renee?
Well, for me, what drew me in was that the idea that shamans know that absolutely everything is energy, from my wind whistle to this computer to the books we read. And so energy is energy. There's no difference between energy. It's, can't be destroyed. It can realign itself. But when you start to be in a relationship with that, you're no better off, good or bad, for all of the energy that is around you. It puts you into a more cooperative place. And so the shamans then understanding that energy is the key, learn how to step outside of this time to go and affect change, because all this energy from all of these lifetimes, all of these 4 billion years, is swirling around in the wind. So if you can tap into it, you can affect your health, you can help other people heal, you can make better changes in your neighborhood. And shamans were really practical. So when I'm the practical shaman, it's redundant. Practical. Because shamans cared about their community, their livestock, their food supplies, and the health of the people who lived in the community. And that's what we've gotten far away from. And that's what the pull back to nature is all about, is, living in harmony with our neighbors. And we're not doing such a very good job of that right now.
So, I've had this thought, Renee, and correct me if I'm way off course, but, understanding consciousness and what we create as a collective, collective, like righteousness, right? Having to be right in a big way, and having hatred and judgment and all this stuff swirling around is a negative energy field. It's a negative attractor field that calls in, God's not punishing us. I think the energies are affecting nature. Is that accurate? Or
Absolutely. And, energy can bang up against itself, which is kind of going on. But self-righteousness is a really big topic right now for me, because I've been working in addiction treatment for the last 6 years. And all of a sudden this year, I've noticed that a lot of people who work in addiction treatment have died. Just like they're just going back out, they're using, and they're dying. And I've been a big proponent in some of these Facebook groups I'm in. It's like, you guys, how dare you be so judgmental? What do you think an addict is going to do when it gets hard? They're going to use. And we've created such a hostile environment in this field as well. I could pick any field, that there's no safe landing strip for people. There's nowhere to say, I'm okay. Instead, it's getting harder and more disconnected, and people, these weather winds are blowing that are just, ripping people apart at the fabric. And one of the things that I'm grateful about my shamanic skills and my rattle is I know the beat of the mother. I can use that beat to get back into my body, back into my heart at any time. And many people don't have those skills, and they're getting lost out there in the storm.
Right. All right. Well, thank God for you and Sandra and everyone like you who's bringing this stuff to light. So, so much good stuff. I'm like really digging this whole shamanic thing.
I know you said you're a shaman wannabe.
Well, I think I've already been, and I've gone on shamanic journeys I didn't know I was on until I understood what they were. I'm like, oh, that's what that was. I wasn't quite prepared for it, but I've been practicing little by little. I have some books. I'm going to read yours too. I don't know if you know, do you know Jane Burns. She's the Celtic shaman.
Only through Sandra. I don't know her
Okay.
personally, but Sandra says she's a lovely person.
She is. And she did a Shift Network event too. And I'm also a marketing person. So I look at response to events, and the shamanism is huge, at least in my circles. People.
Well, I hope it's huge with us today.
Oh, I know. And I read Jane's book. It was very well written. And she did an interesting twist on teaching shamanism, where she introduces shamanic journeys in the book for this woman who lost her husband, and she starts using shamanic journeying again, which is fascinating to read because she's really telling what she does, And then at the end of the book were 12 lessons to practice, which I'm just not very good at. I don't know. I'll get to it. I'll see if I can get into it. I have different ways of getting messages, but when I intentionally try to journey, I kind of get in my own way, I think. I don't know.
Well, that might not be the thing for you. Like, what I love about the wind is that I take wind walks. So I go outside, I ask a question, I let the wind tap me on my cheek so I know, I've got the wind's attention, and then I walk. I didn't do very good sitting there with my mala beads morning after morning after morning, and I tried, trust me. Or, the and the, that's just yoga. I watch the clock. But give me a wind walk, and I'm just as happy as a clam.
Nice.
Clams are very happy. I don't know, but
well, they look happy.
Same.
They got big smiles.
They do look happy.
Poking their tongue out at you when you pick them up. All right. So we have something else in common here. We'll try to get to the point of all this, but we're getting everything's getting. We'll go with the wind. I'm a wind type by nature. Okay.
I could tell. A gust in here and a gust over there. This is fun.
It is fun. Okay, so here's what we have in common. The wind gods have guided Renee's life in many directions. A former chef in 1987, she opened the first farm-to-table restaurant in central New York. Now, Renee, I bought my restaurant in 1986. And back then, I had no awareness of farm-to-table at all. I mean, you must have been a true pioneer in that.
I never knew what a pioneer I was until I was asked a couple of years ago to speak to the girls in junior high school over locally, because I teach at the College of the Desert and the culinary department sometimes when I have a little time.
Okay.
And because I really want these people to know where their food comes from. And these other chefs are more about modern day cooking, and I'm there like, no. So I had to do something for the girls, and I started doing research, and I realized when I was cooking in New York City, I was a pioneer. I thought, there weren't very many women in the kitchen. Well, they weren't. And I saw that when I really put it on a timeline. So when I left New York City, and I worked with some of the top chefs in the country at that time, I went back to Syracuse, New York, and I thought I'm just going to cook good food. I had no idea that people didn't like good food, that, that they didn't know what good food was, that I was backed up, my door was backed up to a Chinese restaurant. They were boning, 6-8 cases of chicken twice a week. So I'd get all their bones and make a big stock pot, make my big beef pot, and I had a 6-burner oven stove. I didn't know it was farm to table because it didn't have a name at the time. It was so ahead of its time that it wasn't even named. I just thought I was cooking because I worked at my grandmother's fruit stand, when I was a kid at 7. So I didn't even know that people didn't want fresh vegetables and fresh stock because there wasn't any bases or anything like that in my restaurant. It was just all cooked to order.
Now, do you know when it came? I'm thinking it's been 15, maybe 20 years since Farm to Table came to light or had a name, or do you know?
It's probably about 15, 20 years since, Chez Panisse was open then, and the Silver Palette was open then in New York. Yes. So there was a couple of those restaurants that were open then, but they certainly weren't open up in Syracuse, New York.
No.
And so it wasn't so much that. So the chef that I worked for who said, who do you think you're going to cook for when you get back there, was right. But so when people came up to Syracuse University's graduations, my restaurants would be full of New Yorkers.
Oh.
on a Syracuse University basketball night where it was just local people in town, I would be deader than, because people were having burgers and I didn't know. And so it was a really important learning lesson in my life that I was way ahead of my time.
Now, were you professionally trained, Renee?
I went to the New York Restaurant School in Manhattan after having found out a natural ability. But my first degree was in communication and marketing and all of that. So,
all right. So I always ask my chef friends, how do you think you'd fare on Chopped?
Okay. So this is they just had the next cooking star or something show, or I don't know if they have it anymore. The next top. I got to the top 25 of one of those shows.
Oh my God, woman.
I know. And it was at a time where I owned a holistic network and I really wasn't in a position to go to New York. So I had gotten to the place where I'd been interviewed, submitted my top 25, personal recipes. And, you don't know what they were trying to put together. Right. In fact, many of the shows have reached out to me since, but I used to get disqualified because at one point in my life, I was a professional chef. Like I can't go on one of the home cooking shows.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well,
so I think I would have done well.
Okay. I watched Chopped and I'm like so out of my element now because food has come huge leaps and bounds since the development of Food Network and the Cooking Network. So many people are so much more elevated in their awareness of how to prepare incredible food. I watch Chopped and I'm like, all right, what would I do? And I'd be dumbfounded. I'm like, okay, I can't. I have to practice more before I could go on any of those shows. So anyway.
Well, and I did have a cooking show on cable TV. When cable first came out, we're dating ourselves, you used to be able to have public access. And so we used to move my whole studio in and move it out. And it was still when it was on reels. So let's really date myself.
Yeah.
And we produced 4 or 5 shows before it became too expensive and too cumbersome to do it. Yeah. But I had mothers and grandmothers teaching me how to cook.
Oh, nice.
So I've digitized some of them and they're on my YouTube channel. You can see.
Oh, cool.
So it was called Cooking with Renee.
Nice. I have it in my feeling like I wouldn't mind being a host for a cooking show. Like I love diners, drive-ins, and dives. He does a phenomenal job with what he does. He's just got it down. All right. Off the food, back to our original topic.
Off the food truck and back to the wind.
All right. Okay. So Renee has developed the Awakening Compass that's featured in her book, Winds of Spirit. It's a navigational tool designed to provide guidance, focus, and clarity of direction in your life, no matter which way the wind is blowing. So Renee, this is your award-winning book, Winds of Spirit, right?
Yes, it won a Nautilus Gold in religion.
Congratulations. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a little bit more about this book?
So I'll just show you in case you're curious. It's a beautiful.
I love that cover.
That's one of the benefits of having Hay House. They have this beautiful art staff.
Yeah.
So basically about 10,000 years ago, the more and more religion kind of divided us. We lost the ways of the wind. Like before that, the Yuruk in Turkey were wind believers. And there's cultures throughout, even the Polish, there's still the wind whisperers. And in Malaysia, there's wind healers and things like that. But it got really off the radar. So I was writing a book for my coaching clients called Is Your Compass Pointing True North? When I said, well, I better find out what a compass is. Lo and behold, spirit always has a different road for you when you really allow yourself to be wind driven. And I thought, well, this is really curious. When I started looking at the wind was that, Mary Poppins came in on an east wind and left on a west wind. Sherlock Holmes and Adapa down in Mesopotamia, they were always talking about the wind birds, the wind beings, the wind spirits, and really kind of wondering where that got lost. So I did a search and I came up with 150 wind gods and goddesses from throughout history. And then I thought, well, I'm going to just start seeing which ones I can find more information on. So what came out as a book for coaching, Then a metaphor for the wind went to the cross-cultural wind spirits throughout time. And then I started to summon these wind energies, and I started to realizing that they were consciousnesses all of their own, and that when summoned, you could have a cooperating spirit. Like I pulled one last night and it was Dagoda, the Polish wind of compassion. And it was about finding freedom and forgiveness. Now, one would think wind is wind. Yeah, there's a north wind and south wind. What was curious was that, like Sila Inoa, the Inuit is about wisdom, and La Omoa Omoa is about the ancestors. So my guess is that when the world went dark after the last catastrophic thing in 14,500 years ago, about that, when things could move again, because there was a time when everything was constricted and there was just a haze over the planet, the winds seem to have gone to the far corners of the world and took the information that the people who were going to be living in those far reaches needed. So like, what you would need up to be Silawa Inawa would be, you'd really need to understand the wisdom of the wind to know when you move from your winter encampment on ice to your summer home where you're going to grow crops that are going to get you to survive for the winter. And if you look at them all, like they're all in relationship like that.
Well, I do this podcast about your weekly dose of higher consciousness, Renee, and it's just each one is their own level of consciousness. What you're saying to me, like forgiveness is a level, wisdom is a level, love is a level, compassion.
I love that. And then I was thinking this weekend that I'm working with Hulda, or Hule, who goes by many names, a Teutonic wind goddess in the Shift Network course. And what I thought about over the weekend on one of my wind walks was that, wow, she was so important and is such a threat to Christianity that they incorporated her in as the wind that took unbaptized souls to the Milky Way. So they didn't know what to do with her, so they made her have a specific job that then they could relate to, the believers who had since lost their direct revelation of spirit and had to have now an intermediary, the priest, telling them, if you don't get baptized, we're going to send you off with Hulda to the Milky Way where lost souls go.
That's too funny. Well, hopefully we're all like transcending all of these archaic beliefs slowly but surely. So Renee, I got to tell you, everything I get, once I start aligning with something, everything shows up around it, as you know, right? I don't know if you happened to see 60 Minutes last night.
I did, about the Eagles or
Is that kind of Falcons? Like what you're talking about?
Absolutely.
I know.
See, they need a different wind out there than we need over here in Palm Desert, California.
Right.
But they're in relationship to it. There's no question in their mind, other than their tribe is shrinking, that they are in relationship with the birds that fly to get them the food that they need. Because again, remember, shamans were concerned with the food, the longevity, the animals. And so they're actually a living representation of a tribe that hasn't been so affected by the outer winds.
Okay, so for listeners and viewers, 60 Minutes had a segment on last night, which is the only thing I watched. That's the only thing that I turned it on to. I'm like, oh, interesting. Renee, where was this tribe from? Do you remember?
They're from, it's sandwiched between Russia and up there in the it begins with a M, Malta.
Oh yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, Maltese, and so they're the Maltese shamans who, they can land a falcon on their arm and actually cooperate with the falcon to hunt for foxes and rabbits and whatever they need for survival.
Okay, so it's a falcon.
Well, that's their version of the eagle.
Oh, okay.
So it's the raptures.
The raptor, right. And you have a falcon on your cover, don't you?
Yes, it's it might be a hawk. I'm not
Oh, a
quite
hawk.
sure.
Okay.
But they're all, where I live up on Whidbey, we have the eagles that nest in the trees. And I run out like a little kid every single time they squeal.
Oh,
And that's all day long. I could be typing along and I run outside and I get excited like a kid each and every time. So I understood that woman's draw to be out there and be accepted by the tribe, because like the man said, this is coming from her heart.
yeah.
There's no stopping her heart that wants to do this.
Right. The woman who went out there to study that. Right. That's a different part of the story. Okay. We don't want to get too tied up.
Right.
So if you look on YouTube, I'm sure you'll find the 60-minute episode about the peoples. It's like a Siberian landscape,
Yes.
it seems, in Russia, Malto, maybe. Right. It's worth a watch. Pretty interesting. And speaking of eagles, I keep getting sidetracked. I'm going with the wind here, Missy, in your honor.
Thank you.
I was doing my podcast about your weekly dose of higher consciousness, and I was talking about the consciousness level of animals and birds. And we spoke about the crow, who's of higher consciousness, which I didn't know. And at the end of that podcast, I have views of the Crystal River, the Rocky Mountains right out of my window, and a bald eagle flew right across my line of awareness. I stopped it. I'm like, oh my God, everyone, a bald eagle just flew by.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to some more nitty gritty about this whole wind thing. Like, how did you even come into this interest of kind of wind shamanism?
As I said, I was writing a book for my coaching clients on the compass, and I kept following the trail. And one speck of dirt ricocheting off another with the wind got me to uncover these 150 wind gods and then narrow into 32. And then when I started calling up the wind for one of my clients, I thought it was a game changer.
Oh.
We were sitting there because we both had the same, people, when you do journeys, your symbols will be different than my symbols. However, the symbols were telling the same story.
Oh.
And so then it was like, aha. And then I started doing, like any good marketer does, I just started having teleclasses. And all of a sudden I called on Hulda, and like the door slams and they're like, boom, there's this energy in my living room, and I'm there like, okay. And so every time I stepped along the way, I would doubt it, and then I'd be shown, no, these are real. And then at some point I knew that when I was in Chile, when I was 40, and the Mapuche shaman said, you have a big destiny that you need to grow into, and this name that I'm giving you means the sound between passing things. So the destiny was there, and I just had to align to that destiny so that it would unravel. Because when I first started having these thoughts, I had an editor who's does a lot of New York Times best-selling books, and I had a spiritual teacher. I was telling them my wild and crazy wind stories, and they're like, you need to write this down. You need to start taking better notes. And I would get these downloads before a class, and I'd have to call my spiritual teacher up, and I'd say, how am I going to translate this today? And she was really good, because she is a teacher master of saying, okay, well, let's put this into form, and this is what you'll do, and this is what you'll do, this is what you'll do. And so it was like, for a couple of years, learning from somebody else how to translate what was just being downloaded. And now I'm a little more proficient at it. And it's a good thing is because she's gone on a month silent retreat right now, so I can't call her to make sure.
It's up to you, Missy.
It's all up to me, but
yes.
we talked through these 7 modules pretty good for the Shift Network class, and
oh, good.
I kind of feel where I know where I'm going.
Okay, so without giving away the farm,
okay,
without giving away
that was really great.
which is Renee's Renee's event. So the Shift Network, all of you listeners and viewers, starts off a course launch with a 1-hour free webinar, which has already happened live. So you can access that that webinar for probably, I would guess, even into January of 2020. We'll see. You can always try. But typically they want to give you access so that you can go and take the course whenever you get, find your way. So without giving away the course, can we talk about the 4 cardinal winds and what they are?
Sure.
Okay, that's kind of basic. This is 101, right?
Well, no, you would think that this was basic, although there was one point when I wanted to pull the 4 cardinal winds right out of the book because it is basic, but it's really basic doesn't always mean easy.
Okay.
Basic means simple. So just a few weeks ago, when people say, well, how do I know what direction I'm traveling? Well, what I've just recently learned, it's the wind that's blowing in your face at the given moment.
Okay.
So, and this is when you close your eyes and ask what direction am I heading and feel which way the wind is coming into your face. So first of all, you have to always know what your bearings are, because the example that is really easy to give. So we're in holiday seasons. Okay. So all the stores, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, they're all mobbed. If you're having a north wind blowing, for example, in your face, you're going to be a lot more spiritual and a lot more, oh yes, it's a busy time and the community's all out shopping, and you're going to be a lot more gracious about the wait. If you're having more of an opposing south experience, what's in it for me? My needs, I got to hurry up. I've got people coming to the house. You're going to be in a hurry. The lines are going to be so long that they're not going to be moving, and you're going to be jumping between lines looking for the shortest way out, and you're just going to find yourself exasperated.
So quick question, Renee. If I'm walking to the store and the wind is blowing at me from the north, that's for the first scenario. How can it blow at me from that? I have to be facing south for the wind to be blowing south, right?
This is the metaphorical version.
Okay.
So sometimes you could go outside and take it really literal. Wow, there's a north wind blowing. What's coming in from spirit for me?
Okay.
But when you remember that sailors navigate from their own wheelhouse. So I'm navigating my ship, you're navigating your ship, these nice divine vessels that we have. So my north is not your north, and it's not the next person's north. So at any given moment in your own personal, say you've got an energy bubble around you that has no relationship to, what wind is really going out there, if you're just doing an internal consciousness check. Okay?
Yep.
In this system, and I did an overlay of a lot of systems, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of differences about what the north represents, what the east, what's the south, and what's the west. I arbitrarily, with the help of my wind spirits, created that in the east, which is a lot of traditions in the east, from the Vedic to a lot of the native traditions. The east is where the sun rises. It's the new beginning. In the Vedic tradition, the east is where all mind, memory, and beliefs, all memories, past, present, and future, are stored. So the east has everything in this work to do with the mind and new beginnings.
Okay.
In my awakening compass, now we're talking about my compass that I'm using to work with people, the south has to do with your needs and desires and your emotions. The west has to do with your body, your physical body, your harvest and endings.
Okay.
The north has to do with your spiritual, your community, and the buy-in of the community. Like, if you could have the most brilliant idea, the brilliant teaching, but if there's no one to buy in, you're going to be lugging it around your own personal compass over and over again. And so I look at this compass as a cycle of experience. So every day has its own cycle of experience where you wake up in the east, by noon, that's your midday. By afternoon, what you've accomplished, you can harvest it, and then you go and dream about what you're going to do. So every day has that individual experience. Now, when we're trying to navigate in this linear timescape, which we've been accustomed to for about 10,000 years, it's not around, it's like this. So you peak out here, and then the rest of it is a decline, and you become less valuable if you can't produce over here. Your production goes down. However, if you did that same thing on your life and look at, okay, when I was a child, I did childlike things, and then I grew, and then I'm here, and I'm wise over here, and and I become part of being of service in my older years, hopefully, if you're awake. And so you can look at you can take a slice out of your life and look at it from any given perspective with this awakening compass.
Okay. So, so what is the event? What's this, the first 1 hour webinar about? What are you really touching on there for interested viewers and listeners?
We talk about how the wind can work. So one of the fun things that I do in there is that you write down a nagging thought on the wind, and then we call upon one of these consciousnesses, this energetic wind consciousness, and we use Madame Feng Popo. She's Chinese, and she comes down on her spotted tiger, and she catches that thought for you in a wind sack, because winds always were carried in bags and stuff, and catches it, takes it out beyond the Milky Way where those lost souls from the 1500s are sitting, and we send it out past through time and space, with some light and love, and by golly, it works. So you use that wind power to remove a negative thought pattern.
Okay. And just say, take it away.
Take it away.
Set intention. Well, that's what so this is, I read this one line, it's how to summon what you call the wind of your specific intention to make it your ally and harness its transformative energies. That's what you just basically said.
Absolutely.
In a different way.
What I do as a coach, and I do on this call, is I give you a framework, which is this awakening compass, to look at something. So if you look at it through 4 or 5 different lenses, then you can see, because we like to make up as human what we think is the real story. Like, ask your brothers and sisters what happened Christmas when you were 10, or Hanukkah when you were 10, or whatever your tradition is. And you will get, depending on how many siblings, you'll get all of those different responses. So somewhere in the middle of that is some truth. Somewhere in there. So when you have a model that you can use to measure your own truth, you can start to see how you're doing. Not compared to my ship, but to your own ship. We have different harbors we're trying to get to.
Right.
I wanted a best-selling Hay House book. So a lot of my life was geared towards that, holding that vision.
Right. Cool. Okay. So listeners and viewers, if you're interested in listening in on Renee's freebie 1 hour webinar with the Shift Network, you can go to the mindbodyspiritnetwork.com/interview-Renee, RENEE, Baribeau, BARIBEAU. And there will be links below the video, the blogs, Facebook, whatever you are watching this, listening on a podcast, so you can find it and you can access it there. And all of these Shift Network intro events lead to like a 7 or 8 week online course. And Renee, what's it for you? Is it a 7-weeker or?
It's a 7-week course.
Okay, it seems like all of them are 7 weeks now. And can you give us a little outline of what this course is intended for? How is it going to help people?
It is going to help you shift your 2020. So whenever you're listening to this, you will have a far different experience by the end of that, by taking this course that begins with the full moon of December, and it actually goes through 3 moons because we go kind of dark for the holidays, although I have the I Am Symposium, which has fire tenders. What makes it different from every other online symposium is that there's fire tenders and people keeping altars around the world. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with this linear inventory. We're going to go to Hulda's cave. Hulda's the one who is in the northern part of Germany, where the women and people go to her at Christmas time in order to ask for the birth.
Is this a goddess, a Nordic goddess?
It's a wind goddess. It's a wind goddess, yes.
A wind goddess, right. Okay, a wind goddess, all right.
All wind goddesses.
Okay.
And we're going to go in through her bog into the cave, where we're going to leave a marker so we can come out and in during the holy days, because we don't want you to miss out on any of the fun.
Right.
And when we come back out, and this is just perfect shift timing, that's all I can tell you, is we come out at the Epiphany. So we get to see what was revealed to us in this place of this cave, this womb of our life, about how we live linear. And then I have a process where we're actually going to bend time. We're going to take that linear landscape and bend it to the cycle calendar I'm talking to you about, the cyclical awakening compass calendar, so that we're going to overlay the events of our life to see where the major events of our life happened, whether they happened in the spring, the summer, the fall, and the winter. And then the winds have taught me about the dynamics of creativity. All of these wind spirits were creator gods. So every single creation story has a wind character. So some of us create with chaos, some of us create with process order, some of us create with gestation, some of us need oppositional forces, and some of us partner with nature. We're going to look at how you did those major events in your life. Were you using gestation, and did you have a stillbirth because you held it too long? Or maybe you let it go too fast. And then we're going to work with these dynamics in order to see what dynamics would work best for what we want to create in 2020. And we'll set some goals, and we're going to hold this space of working with the wind energies, that you're going to call up. We're going to make wind flags, and we're going to have a lot of fun preparing ourselves that 2020 will be the year of how we want to be and show up in our lives for no matter what it is we want to create.
Nice. Great course to kick off the new year, Renee.
Absolutely.
I figured you and your wind friends knew the best time to launch.
Right?
That's awesome. So not everyone knows about this symposium we're doing. Would you like to just let everyone know how they can be a part of that, and where to access it, and what's it all about?
Oh, thanks for sharing it. The I Am Symposium I've been doing since 2011. Before the internet was really popular, I was trying to do live broadcasting worldwide from my yard. And it's grown into be, it's a gift. We give it to the community back. And this year we have 17 shamanic type people, from Sandra Ingerman, Hank Wesselman, Jan Ingalls Smith, Dory Coate. We have like a whole solid group of people who are giving like a 20-minute teaching that you can listen to throughout the holidays. But the coolest part about this is every year we have 300 to 500 fire tenders who keep the candle burning, those little battery lights, and hold space for this event in a really beautiful way. And at the end, people share their altars, and I make a video out of it just because it's just gorgeous, incredible. So you can find that over at the iamsymposium.com. Okay. And this year, because of the shift outward class, it'll be one day on the 21st of December.
Okay, cool.
All day.
For that, sharing that and doing that, Renee. I mean, that's you shamans like rippling out into the world some new energies. We appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll share all of these links so you can access Renee's book, the symposium, and you'll do this every year. So once you get in on it, you'll be reminded each year if you want to be a part of it, right, Renee?
Yes, and we love fire tenders and space holders. It's a
Okay.
great place to show up.
All right. Maybe I'll be a fire tender.
Like if this is your step into shamanism.
I
Come
know.
on,
All right. Well, we'll talk about what I got to do.
Okay, all right. It's
All
simple.
right. So we got to cut it because I've got another appointment and Renee's got to go too. And I thank all you listeners and viewers today. And if you enjoy what we're doing here at the Mind, Body, Spirit Network's High Vibe Tribe radio.com, you could subscribe to our podcast there. If you prefer the video and our lovely faces, you can follow us on YouTube at highvibetribetv.com. And anytime you want access to really amazing online courses, online events, practitioners of all types, you can go to the mindbodyspiritnetwork.com where we provide links to some professionals in a wide variety of alternative practices. Renee, my dear, and I do want to give a shout out to Renee and Sandra Ingerman, who host the Shaman's Cave podcast every week. It's a weekly podcast, and I love Sandra already, and you guys have probably heard my interviews with her. We have a good time. So I'm sure the two of these together are like, you know, the dynamic duo.
We're like sisters from a different mother. But
there you go.
There's an original mother.
So they can find that at theshamanscave.com, presumably, Renee?
Yes, or
Okay.
Shamans TV.
Oh, shamanstv.com.
Right.
Excellent. All right, you guys. Renee, thank you. Happy holidays to you, and good luck with your symposium, and we'll talk about being a fire starter.
Thank you so much, Liz. What a delightful soul you are, and this has been fun.
Thank you.